Hey, and welcome back. This is video number 2, and we're going to talk about Online Protection 101. So, you've heard the statement, don't open email attachments or even emails from people that you don't know. Now, keep in mind that some of the viruses can attack people that you do know, and you have no idea that the pictures, the family photos that they're sending to you are attached with viruses and spyware because their computer got infected. And that's how smart hackers began to figure it out. They figured it out that if you get an email from your family, your loved one, your husband, your wife, your son, your granddaughter, grandson, and so forth, then you're most likely going to open that email rather than an email from a stranger, right? So obviously that is an issue. Now, if you have the proper antivirus software set up, that will be scanning your email attachments and scanning, your browsers and everything you visit in terms of websites, then it will detect if there is a virus or spyware coming through your computer. So that's definitely a plus. But you can eliminate that by just common sense. Thinking, okay, I got an email from my grandson, but the email doesn't even sound like my grandson. The way that the words are worded, the grammar and things like that. It's best to just contact them and say, hey, did you send this to me? And verify that before anything were to happen. Now, like I said earlier, if you have your antivirus software set up, then it will scan for this. Now, some free softwares will do this, some won't. Sometimes you'll have to upgrade to the pro level version. And I'll show you some antivirus softwares that will actually help you in this. I personally have had many situations where this has had happen, but the antivirus software and the spyware software has caught it before it has done any damage. Now, another thing I want to say is that if you are using a program like Outlook Express or Thunderbird or any other type of software that sits on your computer that automatically accepts email attachments and opens them up, you're going to need to have an antivirus system on your computer. Because if you don't, these softwares will tend to automatically open the email attachment. And then if you don't have the systems in place to scan these attachments, then guess what? You're going to have a compromise and a security breach. I like to stick with web-based email programs. So, for example, Gmail, or even if you're using sites like AOL and so forth, or your internet service provider, it's probably better to access the emails by going directly to the website. So, for example, mail.yahoo.com or Gmail and so forth, instead of using a program like Outlook Express. Simply because if you go to the email, you're less likely to get a virus, especially if softwares like these will automatically download the email attachments. Now, I'm not going to say it's the same across the board, but majority of times I found that is the case. So I just want to give you that tip so that you can eliminate as much as possible. Now, we could argue back and forth. Some techies could say, oh, whatever. But for the majority of times, what I've noticed is while fixing computers is I've noticed that to be the case. Now, things have changed, but that's just the easiest thing to go with. So, another thing, educate your children. And a lot of times your children will download stuff like free screensavers, free games, free movies, stuff like that. Free stuff is not always free. In the real world, free stuff always has something attached to it. Now, big sites like Netflix, Amazon, Crackle, stuff like that is fine to visit because they're legitimate. But make sure you do your research beforehand and do your due diligence beforehand. But keep in mind that some of these sites, like Juarez sites, will have spyware. And if you go to the wrong sites, and a lot of times your children will go to the wrong sites, or even your parents, your elderly will go to the wrong sites and download a spyware without knowing it. And I'm not targeting a specific group, saying, elderly or young children or whomever. Just in general, you want to make sure that you watch out for free stuff. Now, me, having helped tons and tons of people, I found over the years a lot of hackers tend to focus on the elderly or people that are not suspecting. So just keep that in mind. That's why I'm focusing on specific groups. Or even if you're a young person not really aware of what's going on. But free stuff tends to be attached with spyware and other things like that. Not always, but a good majority of it. And little do you know, something like this would contain viruses, spyware, and so forth. Now, how can you prevent your children and other people that are using your computer that you might be using for work and so forth to visit these kinds of sites? Well, there is a site called covenanteyes.com, and if you look specifically for the web content filtering, this will actually filter sites that inappropriate web-based sites based on age and so forth. Now, they provide other stuff, but the main thing that I want you to focus on is web content filtering. Because if your children go to, let's say, for example, inappropriate sites and they don't even know that they're doing that just because they're trying to get free stuff like Juarez sites, other inappropriate type sites, then unknowingly they will probably get some sort of spyware, and you'll have no idea that happens until you see your internet browser begins to slow down to a crawl. You start getting all these pop-ups with inappropriate, naughty type stuff. So by that point, it's kind of too late. You can combat that with spyware protection, but you need to have all that in place beforehand. Otherwise, your computer's going to go pretty much to a crawl in terms of your internet surfing. So I want to make sure that I cover that. And another thing that I'd highly recommend is that if you have credit cards to use online, try to create a credit card specifically for online purchases. Or you can also use what we call prepaid credit cards. So prepaid Visa, prepaid MasterCard cards that you can use specifically for online purchases. So if something were to happen, it's not going to affect you as a whole. It's just going to affect your online stuff. Now, obviously, you can get your credit cards stolen by thieves and other people like that, but that way you can keep track of it online. So that's just a recommendation that I wanted to make for those of you who are really paranoid. So those are just a few tips, and with that said, let's move on to video number 3, and I'll talk about some antivirus software and firewall software that you can use right away to protect yourself and your computer.